Great. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Trina Scully. I'm the Outreach and Events Manager here at the Saskatoon Chamber of Commerce. The Chamber team and many of you are participating today from Saskatoon, which is situated in Treaty 6 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis people. If you're joining us from other parts of the province today, a warm welcome to you and thanks for joining us. So this is our Power Up series, which features industry experts who can provide Chamber members with real-world tips and tools to give their businesses a boost. Today's format is super simple. If you have any questions for our presenters, you can type those into the chat and they will answer them throughout the presentation today. So our featured speakers today are Shauna Caldwell from Insightrix Research and Larry Anderson from Chess Club Agency. They'll be chatting about employer branding, providing a solution to the labor shortage. So just a little bit about our presenters today. Shauna, she brings a vast amount of research experience moving from Toronto to join Insightrix 4 years ago. She has expertise in a wide range of unique client needs, especially in the branding space. She is passionate about working with individual clients to evaluate and measure the effectiveness of their brand and impacts a strong brand presence that you can have. She prides herself on building customized solutions along with great team researchers to dig deeper into your brand story, values, perceptions, and identity. Larry's experience and enthusiasm is tailor-made for her role as Chief Relationship Officer at Chess Club Agency. Whether it's client relations or internal relationships, she's a steward of respect, accountability, and support, and ensuring that whomever she meets, they feel valued. Larry has always been passionate about fostering a culture that reflects those ethics and applies that same approach to our clients' employer branding. So everyone, please welcome Larry and Shauna.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and I'm not going to let Henry down by remembering to share my sound because we tested it out before. So, okay, I'm just going to go in full screen. All right, can everybody see that? Okay, cool. All right, so today, well, first of all, I hope everybody's Valentine's Day was amazing. I always get my son a stuffed animal for Valentine's Day, and I forgot. So I went to the grocery store to get flowers for the office, and I saw this little stuffy there, and I was like, oh, I'll just grab that. Went to the till, and I was like, oh my God, why is everything so expensive? It was like $20 for this little guy. So this all goes back to what we're going to talk about today is employer branding and having a strategy and how planning will actually save you money in the end. So you don't have to pay, $20 for a little stuffy. So first off, my name is Larissa Anderson, or Larry Anderson, but my real name is Larissa Anderson. I'm the Chief Relationship Officer and part owner of Chess Club, which is a creative agency located here in Saskatoon.
Perfect. And thanks everyone for joining. I'm Shauna Caldwell, Chief Revenue Officer at Insightrix Research. We've been kind of serving the Saskatchewan province and outside the province for market research needs for, I think, 20 plus years now. So thanks so much for joining, and it's going to be a great discussion.
Yes. So a little bit of background of our kind of relationship and partnership is Shauna and myself met in the summertime to talk about research and branding in the creative agency space. We were seeing on the agency side, there was a lack of research done, or that it would be so siloed that there was no connection to really hone in the brand and the external perception before we started working on the creative aspect. So we teamed up and we worked on a few branding projects together. And as we were doing that, we were discussing the labor shortage and how employer branding plays a role in this. And that's why we decided to team up and create this presentation to bring awareness to that aspect of branding. So today we are going to talk about employer branding. And I've picked out people in this presentation that have a clear sense of who they are and who their brand is. So we are going to dive into the world of this type of branding and why it is more important than ever. But before we start, we're going to start with some research that Shauna is going to present to us.
Okay, perfect. So starting with the facts. So Insightrix recently did a survey of about 230 individuals that are interested in working in the tech sector, are entrepreneurs, or do actually work in the tech sector now. And so we thought we'd share some of those kind of key findings with you today. So first off, 90% of them said that they would do research on a company before applying for a job. So when you look at this, think about kind of your digital presence. So your website, your social media, your Google reviews. Do they currently display anything about your company's values and goals, or is it just purely product and service based? The second stat we thought we'd share is 77% would look at online reviews, and then 66% would go directly to your social media channels to research a company. Now, I know not everyone is super excited or active on social media all the time, but with Larry and I working together, and we do see it being more and more of a benefit to keeping up with your organic presence on social, especially as we're seeing a shift from Google becoming more of an information source to kind of the social platforms. And now, one of my personal favorites. So this can help with the labor shortage, but what are the top 5 deciding factors that these individuals said when looking for an employer? I think it's no shock to anyone. Compensation and benefits are kind of up there right at number 1, followed by flexibility in the work environment, to positive referrals from current employees, to an alignment with my core values as an individual. So do I align with that company and that employer? To lastly, does the company that I'm looking to kind of apply for a job for have a clear mission and values? So from all of these things, we can see that the research is basically screaming at companies that we need to pay more and more attention to the digital and external presence that you're showcasing, how important it is that you have the values, the benefits of working with you and working with your company. So I'll toss it back over to Larry now to talk a little bit more about kind of what employer branding is.
Yes, and thank you for all those stats. I always, exactly what I always say at the beginning, research is very important. It's a starting point. So what is employer branding? So employer branding is a component of your overall brand, and it is a specific marketing initiative that is dedicated to the employment experience. And it communicates your values, your perceptions, your compensation models, your benefits, and also your organizational culture. So this is a subset underneath your brand. And how I like to explain what it is that I use Spice Girls. Everybody, I think, knows Spice Girls. So Spice World is the overarching brand. That is the brand that is known worldwide. Then I would explain it as each Spice Girl being a subset of that brand. Now, they each cater to a different demographic or a different personality type or a different motive or just a different initiative in general. So I explained it as maybe there's a service brand, there's a CSR brand, there's product brands, and then there's employer brands. So they may all be different, but they all come back to that overarching Spice World brand, that organizational brand. And another way I like to explain what employer brand is, so you can see how it fits in the brand. And this kind of explains how to understand where you go for employer brand. So I'm sure everybody knows the theories of motivation, especially Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So there's this guy about 20 years later, after Maslow introduced this hierarchy of needs, he decided to dive a little bit deeper. His name is David McLennan, and he discovered that there's actually just 3, and it's like a trifecta of motivation that can be utilized to understand workplace motivation. So these 3 were achievement, power, and affiliation. Now, he stated that either one person is motivated by 1 or 2 of these 3 motivators. And if that specific or the more dominant one is not achieved, then there is a chance that that individual will be demotivated at work and will be more likely to leave the organization or not feel fulfilled at work. I put a PDF sheet in the chat if everybody has that there. There is a QR code at the end or at the bottom of that PDF. If you guys do that at some point in time during the presentation, I would love to know what you think your motivators are. And then at the end of the presentation, we'll go through it and see who is the most motivated. So last time we did this in at Innovation SaaS, so there was a lot of tech startups there. The main motivator there was achievement, and I think only like 6% was power, and the second was affiliation with the community. And it goes into a little bit deeper on what those motivators are and gives you a little bit of example. And to explain employer brand, I always like to give an example. And a great example of employer brand was Heineken's 2019 employer brand campaign called Go Places. So this campaign focused on 33 of their employees globally, global employees. And they started with research. They conducted research in 15 of their markets around the world, and they really wanted to understand what the brand and campaign should focus around. And they discovered that there are 3 main pillars that make up Heineken and their employer brand. Those 3 pillars were authenticity, transcendence, and long-term brand management. So I do have an example of video of their employer branding campaign, which I'll play for you guys. So I'm just going to start it. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it, just so I don't play the whole thing with no sound.
We ask,
Good? Okay, we're playing
hold
the
a
whole
minute.
thing.
You think, wait a minute. You say, I know you. We think, but do you? We say, come along. You ask, but where to? We say, you think about it. You think. You say yes. We guessed you'd say yes. You ask where to start. We say, follow your heart. You think we're one brand. We say we are more. You ask, how much more? We say, so much more. More than 250 brands, more than 70 countries. You ask, will you mold me? We say, we will stretch you. You think you can be more. We say, you can be more! You ask, how much more? There is so much more in store. Learn a craft, learn a trade. There's a journey to be made. Choose a path or go off it. It's up to you. You thought, you asked, now we say, do. You think, do I have what it takes? We know you have what it takes. You ask, where will we go? We say, we don't know. You show us.
So after watching that video, interested to know what the motivators that you guys think it would be. When I watch it, I always think that they are going after the personas that have that achievement motivator. They say, oh, you think you can? We say do. So they're setting themselves up to say, if you make a goal, we will help you achieve that goal. There's also a secondary motivator of power too, with having that global reach. It's getting that center of influence as well. So after watching the video, learning about the facts and learning a little bit more about how employer brand looks in the marketplace, what do you do now? So after you develop or decide that there is a need for employer brand, you want to create a strategy. So some organizations already have maybe a brand strategy or some kind of marketing strategy. So this could be implemented within the brand strategy that is already existing, or it could be a subset as well. Either way, it has to be able to work within your organizational needs. We are going to go through the components of employer brand strategy, which is also on the fact sheet that I attached to the presentation or in the chat. So first, we're going to go through the audit of your current brand perception, which is research. employee personas, defining the differentiators, determining the channels, employer value proposition, brand guidelines, and KPIs. And I will let Shauna take it away for the research portion.
Okay, perfect. So what do we really want to do, or what are we trying to say when we talk about the research piece of employer branding? And that's really to provide a holistic brand evaluation. And in short, that is examining your brand from all possible angles. So meeting the potential employees, so everyone who doesn't already work for you, and then current employees evaluating against those that do work for you. So really, when it comes down to the goal of that holistic brand evaluation is to confirm and generate alignment in the perceptions of your brand across these two groups. So really what we want to do is put meaning behind the numbers. Are we what we say we are? And so overall, there are many facets to who we are, what we want to represent, how we communicate, to how that's kind of interpreted. And I won't get into the psychology of all of that because I'll be honest, I don't think I could, but I do want to talk a little bit about how measuring your brand from both an external and an internal perspective can help create this better alignment. So let's dig into kind of the external piece. So this is a broad overview of your brand and how it is perceived and recognized amongst those outside of your organization. These could be your potential candidates. The method that we usually use to evaluate this could be a survey coupled with secondary research, but what we really do is work with you and with Chess Club to come up with an approach that makes the most sense for your company. What is covered in this piece of research is really we want to know what people see of your brand. So things like your brand logo, your brand colors, website design, social media analytics, your letterheads. Are the general public, so those outside of your organization, able to recognize your brand from the things that they're seeing, like materials or publications or packaging? And most importantly, when we look at all of these things, are they consistent? And so ways that we can do that is through the research piece, is asking critical questions like, do you recognize the brand, and how do you recognize the brand? Hoping that they'll play back to us some of these key elements that are in your identity of a brand logo or on your website or your social media channels. Also asking, have they ever connected with your brand or your company? If so, how? What else do they know about your brand? So can they kind of give us some unaided perceptions about what your brand is? And do they know anyone who currently uses, interacts, or works with your company or your brand? And then lastly, how does this solve a problem for them? That's one of my favorites because that really gets to you, like, do they really understand your brand and how it can help them? So really, when we look at that external piece, why does it matter? We ask, well, from an external audit, we get a collective idea of how you are presenting yourselves to those that don't already have a direct connection to you. And really what this tells us is, are we represented in a way that we think we are? And are we resonating with the general public that in a way, that aligns with our core values? So that's the external piece. Now let's look at the other side, which is the internal piece. So the objective of this is to provide an insider look of the brand and how it is perceived and recognized among those that have a direct connection with you. So these could be your employees, your founders, investors, things that are really connected already to you. Again, the method of evaluation we would use in the internal piece is very similar to the external. So it could be a survey or a variety of primary research techniques. But really what this piece would do is it would be customized to the audiences that we are trying to reach. So employees, you could do that, through a community or a survey, or if you're looking at maybe CEOs or founders or boards, you might do more interviews and that kind of thing. But we really customize that approach with yourself and with Chess Club. And so what are we trying to do with the internal piece? It's very similar to what we just did with the external, and we're trying to get employees to see and play back to us how they see your brand. So we take a slightly different spin on it. So instead of looking at things like your logo or your website, we're looking at how you communicate internally on things like company newsletters, your company intranet, policy changes, training programs, new hire packages. And so from all of these things, again, the biggest thing is consistency, but are employees able to connect the company's mission and values and goals from these communication pieces that they're seeing on a daily basis? So specifically what this piece of research is trying to do is we want employees to play back to us what we are trying to portray as an organization. So again, critical questions that we can kind of ask to help pull this out from employees are, can you describe to us the company's overall brand? Can you describe to us the company's mission and values? What problems do you think our company or our brand can solve for our customers or for our members? And one of my personal favorites is, what do you think your unique role is in conveying our brand's promise? And so that ties it back to the individual, which I think is so important, because as someone who works anywhere, you play a critical role in that company, in that branding, and how it's perceived. And so that's always a really interesting question to kind of dissect later on in the research. And then lastly, we could also ask, do you have any suggestions for improvements on the brand? So the internal piece really tells us an audit, and we get an in-depth overview of how you are performing on the things that you want to portray. And then what it does from there is it really gives us kind of measurements to let us know is, are we holding up on the most important things that we need to do to maintain a strong brand? So we've looked at the external and we've looked at the internal. So putting those two perspectives together really allow us to test that theory of, are we what we say we are? So we know that human nature leads people to talk about their experiences, right? Whether it's positive or negative, people are going to start sharing those, and it's going to spread, and even more so in a digital context. So that's why evaluating ourselves against our core values from both an outside and an insider perspective, we can easily start to see where there might be gaps in alignment in our brand. So how we're perceived to how we're portraying things, or how people are talking about us to what we really want them to say. So all of these things, we can start to see gaps in that alignment. Those gaps are your critical points because they create new opportunities to engage in different ways. And so before I turn it back over to Larry, I do just want to leave you with one of my favorite quotes. I don't know who said it, but your brand is a promise, and promises need to be kept, especially if you want to be seen as credible.
Perfect. Oh, sorry.
Nope.
There we go. You could just take credit for it, Shauna.
I know,
it was me.
Shauna from Insightrix. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so next up, we're going to look at the employee persona. So now that you have the external and internal research, you want to start creating these ideal employee personas that will help you target the personality, the aspirations of the individual, the motivators, the skill sets that you need that will all fit into your culture and your organizational needs. So for this, I go back to that trifecta of motivators. So start with those three. Are we looking for employees that have an achievement, power, or affiliation motivators? And this could be done in the research too, or found out in the research. Like, most of our employees are highly motivated by achievement and goals, and the external research says the same. So you would want to start creating those personas for achievement. Then you would go down to the skill set. Now, the reason why you always have to do the skill sets, and it's just not establishing that they're motivated by achievement, is because an IT's skill set is a lot different than a salesperson's skill set or a CEO's skill set. So you want to list those skill sets underneath and create these personas within your organization. And once you and dive a little bit deeper to look at the talents too that they need, not only the skills, but the talents that they require for that as well. Next is to define the differentiators. So the differentiators are basically the base of your employer brand story. This is where it starts. And a differentiator is not something as simplistic as every Friday we have pizzas or we have beers at 3. All delightful things. And I think Shauna and I discovered last time we did this presentation that they have beers, we have pizza. Why haven't we combined forces? That's another topic. But A differentiator is something as like a core value of that organization that is different from anyone else of your competitors. So an example I like to use is Netflix, because it's been proven about their differentiator. They define themselves as an open-minded and friendly organizational culture and really employee oriented. So they're based in the States, and they have a parental leave that almost matches Canada's parental leave. They're one of the largest organizations to implement that. And to even back it up even further, Glassdoor has reported that they are the best rated company by their employees for I think about 2 years, but I may have to check back on that. But it's been a couple of years that they've been rated the highest. So you can tell in an organic digital sense that what they're saying as their differentiator is being proven by their employees. Now, when you do find your differentiator, make sure that you can back it up and that ensure that your strategy, your KPIs, and all your tactics support that differentiator. Otherwise, it will not be successful. It's like saying something and doing the opposite. After you've determined your differentiators, you want to determine the channels that you're going to communicate this new employer brand on. So you know your personas, you know what defines your employer brand, and now we have to figure out how we are going to communicate it. I usually start this process by looking at the demographic, because that's an easy way to tell where they live in a digital sense. I start with digital and then I move on to traditional marketing as well. So you start with the demographic of your persona or your employees that are needed with that skill set. You figure out what platforms they are, figure out what budget you have to perform that. And if you already have a digital or social strategy, you want to make sure that employer branding is a pillar on that employer and social strategy. So you have that organic feed constantly. Now, if you don't have a large digital presence or a large social presence, you've got to have a website. So make sure that it's clearly explained on your website and make sure it stands out from anything else on there and that it's different from your overall company brand, the business side of your company brand. So this will kind of determine where you are digitally, but there are multiple other avenues you can take for traditional methods to kind of communicate your employer brand. So one of it is current employees. As you saw with the Netflix, they were doing the promotion for that. So make sure that you clearly define your employer brand to your current employees. Get them on board, get them drinking the Kool-Aid, as I like to say, like the good Kool-Aid. Lectures and workshops, or Chamber YXC webinars. This is all good. You can explain it that way. Relationship management, inbound recruiting, career fairs, and job postings. All of that can be done. And as we get later on, it will show you how you can all connect it. Now, there is a word of caution when you are using all these different channels, digital, traditional, internal. You want to make sure that all the messaging, the imagery, and design are all consistent across each platform, even word of mouth. So when you tell the employees the brand, give them statements, help them with the conversation piece of it so it matches to your brand in a digital sense as well. Authenticity is really essential when you are doing cross-platform promotion. The next is employer value proposition. So this is where your organizational needs and your potential talent needs cross and intersect. So what are you going to offer these individuals that they become passionate about working for your company? So if we go back to Shauna's research about the top 5 things that they consider would be deciding factors, number 1 was compensation and benefits. The next was a flexible work environment. So those 2 aspects, we understand them, but people could understand them by different motivators. Go back to your trifecta, the power, achievement, affiliation. and even the demographic of your individuals going to age. So what does compensation and benefits look like to your specific persona? Maybe one of them is that these employees have a heavy family base, that most of them have large families, so compensation and benefits, they require more. A great example for our agency, a lot of our employees are younger, so we don't have to offer a large amount of compensation, but that are like a family package. But then we also have individuals in the office that do have large families. So we had to find a compensation package that appealed to ones that necessarily don't want it or need it or find it appealing, to those who really need it and utilize it. So those are all one of those employer value propositions that you want to list and explain on your website to appeal to these personas that you're putting out there. The next one is brand guidelines. So this is the creative piece that comes in. This is usually where organizations outsource employer branding, other than the external research. This is where they take what you've done, the research, the employer, the differentiators, the value propositions, we take it all and we decide, okay, what does that creative look like within your brand? So some of you may already have brand guidelines, and this would be a subset in your brand guidelines. But if you don't already have brand guidelines, you would want to develop a specific one for employer branding. Now, these assets would be used to set the brand apart from your particular brand and from your competitors. And it would be a one-stop shop for available resources to create campaign materials. So some things that are in brand guidelines are imagery parameters, color palettes, logo variations, audience breakdown, even the tone or voice. Our agency is quite cheeky in the way that we present ourselves, and that's a different tone than our government clients would take. So understanding that there's different tones within a brand is very important as well. And then the last piece, my favorite part, my bread and butter, is establishing KPIs. So if you were to ask 12-year-old Larissa, what do you want to be when you grow up? It would not be a person who's obsessed with Excel sheets and KPI data tracking. It would not be me be like, I want to be a supermodel or a hairstylist. No, now I'm just like obsessed with Excel sheets. So this is very important because this tracks your success of employer branding to see if it's actually working, and it helps you adjust. It does take time to collect this data and then to analyze it as well. But some of the metrics that you would look at for employer branding would be time to hire. So this is as simple as starting an Excel sheet of, I put this job posting on these platforms, this date, and we hired someone this date. And then you track the either months, weeks, days that it took you to hire that individual. The next would be costs per hire. So you could look at, did I put any promotion behind this? Did I need to? Is there certain job postings that I have to put promotion on because we're not getting enough applicants? This you can help you decide your marketing budget for even acquisition or talent acquisition. Another one is number of applicants, but more importantly is the subset under number of applicants, which is quality applicants. By this, you can look at, I may have got 20 applicants, but only 2 of them were meeting the needs of my job posting. From there, and if this is a consistent thing, then you would start looking at, okay, maybe I'm not on the right channels. Maybe I'm not spending the money correctly. Maybe even a job title has some disconnect for people as well. I know in our industry, it's either account planner or account management, but if a person only knows account planner, then they'll just be searching for that. So you want to have all those keywords thought about when you're looking at that. also the location as well. Then you look at the compensation models, flexibles. Am I offering what these personas are wanting? Another one that you can consider is employee retention rate. So this one's more of a long-term game, but you can take a quick sweep of your internal employees, see how long they've been employed there, what persona do they fit under, what motivator are they under, and then start tracking new hires as well. See how long they are retained for, especially after this implementation of this new model. And those ones, all of those metrics can be easily tracked on a data sheet. It's just the upkeep of someone entering that data and being aware that that needs to be tracked. So what can you do now? What can you do now is to look at that PDF, and either you can start to do it internally, or you can reach out to Shauna for maybe any research needs. They really offer an a la carte service of, okay, you just need this or you need that. And then try your hand at it first internally. And if you're really struggling on developing or understanding how employer branding works, reach out to an agency. I know there are a few that do employer branding. Chess Club is one of them, but make sure that you find an agency that is the right fit for your organization, and they speak the same value system as you guys too, because it is a partnership when you do employer branding. And that is the end of our presentation. So I'm just going to stop sharing here. So we can do a Q&A now if anyone has any questions for us. Oh, I wanted to do the poll. Okay, hold that thought, ladies. Let me see.
Scan the QR code.
Yes. I'm going to exit out here. Okay. Did anyone scan the QR code? Okay, there is no result.
Could you speak to all three of those in a little bit more detail before we choose? Like, what is exactly the difference between affiliation, achievement, and power?
100%. Did you guys open the PDF? Because I think it speaks a little bit to that, but I can definitely go into more detail. Let me just grab this open here. All right. So achievement is about setting goals, setting it and accomplishing goals. So these people are motivated by their own intrinsic needs. These individuals don't need someone to tell them, okay, you should try and do that project, or you, oh, that looks like an interesting thing, you should try your hand at that. So this person is already internally motivated and they want to achieve goals for themselves. The power is really focused on competing, influence others, and exerting control. Now, this sounds a little, sounds a little bit dominant, but this person just wants to be, I always explain it as this person walks into a room and they want to be the person of influence. So that's what they're achieving. Now, this could actually, that could be the more dominant motivator, and then they have a high achievement motivator as well, because they need to set goals for themselves to achieve this power, but that is their main goal. So if you were to say like promotions would be their main goal, giving them a dream of maybe being VP one day, or CEO, having that title and affiliation or status would be one of their intrinsic motivators for that. Another one is affiliation. So this is all about belonging to a group, being part of a community. So this one would, I always like to explain it in a tech sense as well, especially tech startups. They have such a good community and everybody just helps out everybody. It's almost like a social aspect of it. They do want to achieve things, but they want to achieve things as a team. They want to be a part of something. And when it gets to that status thing, they're like, oh, I got to go somewhere else because I want to build something again or be a part of that community. So they're more concerned about culture rather than getting that status. Okay, so we got, yeah. So we got 50% achievement and then 50%. Oh, wait. Okay. The polls are still coming in.
Still coming in. Live action.
Yeah. Live action here, folks.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have 75 achievement and 25 affiliation. So thank you for everyone who did a little vote. So achievement was one of those goals that was very high for Innovation Place as well. So setting those goals.
What one would yours be, Larry?
Definitely achievement. I have a little goal book myself, so. So does anyone have any questions about the presentation or anything in particular?
Do you have a particular set of questions that you would ask in an interview process to determine if somebody's more achievement, power, or affiliation to make sure it's going to be a good fit? Or would you bleed that into the job posting as well? What would your preference be?
I think it would be a combo of both. You would also have to look at the skill sets and see like the achievement for an agency questions would be different for, you know, like a real estate agency, like a creative agency and real estate agency, but you would still want to have that kind of come through in the copy and the job posting, giving them that dream. So if you were to think back to that Heineken commercial, they were very like, you say this and we say yes. It's almost like the world is your oyster. If you want it, we can achieve it with you, kind of thing. But you would want both aspects. But I think the questions would be different for each organization and each posting. But
yeah, I was going to say they'd be definitely different, tailored to the position that you were looking for, right? Like if you were looking for a C-suite versus maybe just an entry level, you might change what those questions look like. But I would definitely agree with Larry in terms of having it in both, because what it does by the job posting is you're going to attract those people, right? And then they're in the door, and then you can kind of go into more detail on those questions during the interview process. So yeah, I think it would be a really interesting thing to kind of test out different statements as you're going and what works for your organization. But yeah.
All right. Well, does anybody else have any other questions for Shauna or Larry? All right. Thank you so much for your time today, Shauna and Larry. We really appreciate it. What a great presentation. I know our members can put a lot of this information to work in their businesses right away. So really appreciate it. Thank you again. And thank you all for coming today as well. So just want to remind you just to check out any of our upcoming events and register for those. We have Chamber on Tap with Kurt and Rodell Genoway from Hometown Homes. We also have our Pins and Pints bowling tournament. I believe it might even be sold out now, so it's going to be a fun time. And also follow the Chamber on our social channels at the Chamber YXC. So thanks again, everyone, for coming. Appreciate it, and take care, and we'll see you next time.